And we're on. And this is a Victory Monday. We will be talking about, I believe for the first time all year, joyously about a win, because you beat the Bills and you beat them that way. You got to be a little excited about the proceedings, but we got a lot of news to cover. But first, let me tell you about the title sponsor of this show, which is 305-800-PAIN. Better Business Bureau accredited with an A+ rating, your car accident, personal injury specialists. Fast connection with trusted doctors and attorneys, always ready to take your call 24/7. Again, that's 305-800-PAIN, 305-800-PAIN. And there is no pain. At least I wasn't feeling any pain on Sunday. And of course, Thompson Cigar. If you want to celebrate this victory, why not with a Thompson cigar? They have the widest selections anywhere on the internet. The original mail order business. Somebody pointed this out to me, and they posted a picture of an old box that they found at a construction site, and it was from a Thompson cigar factory in Tampa. And I looked at the box and I looked it up online, and it had some Spanish writing on it because it was distributed in Cuba. Now, obviously, there's been an embargo on Cuba for almost 70 years. So I traced that box to be somewhere between 1920 and 1950, which is kind of cool. But use our promo code and you get 20% off for Christmas. 3 yards per carry is the promo code. That's the number 3 yards per carry. All right. We'll start here. Adam Engroff, Anthony Hunt have been dismissed. It's part of what was kind of expected once Chris Greer goes, and we talked about this on a previous show. Dolphins have a lot of built-in redundant leadership, and they're probably going to have to start cleaning some of that out. I would expect that this is not the end of this. What do you make of it, Simon, and what does this portend going forward?
I mean, I've seen a couple of people say that firing people who've been in the building since 94 and 99 respectively, in terms of Hunt and Engroff, might mean that the Dolphins already made a decision on who their general manager is.
Simon froze here?
No, I've got Simon right.
Okay, yeah. There you go. All right.
Do you want me to start that again? Or?
Yeah, because I didn't hear any of it.
I mean, it sounds like you froze, buddy. I've heard people say that, when you fire people that have been in the building since 94 and 99, as Hunt and Engroff have been, especially in the midst of the scouting season, that perhaps the team has already made a decision on who its next general manager will be. Those are certainly bold moves for a general manager who is currently holding the interim tag. But also, their co-directors are player personnel, are pro personnel, and that's, it's been part of the massive failing of this club. So it's not really a surprise. And like we consistently say, we're not here to cheerlead when people lose their jobs. There's a huge knock-on effect of families, and these guys have been in the building for 30 years. There's a lot of roots, and kids will have grown up in Miami and those sorts of things. But unfortunately, it's the side of the business, and that side of the business has been really bad. And yeah, that's kind of where we are. And I think it's just me and you now, Chris.
Well, yeah. We have breaking news on the show right now, which is that Alf has been dismissed.
Yeah.
So,
it's been 20 years, but we had to kick him to the curb. So,
yeah, I think that, listen, when you're a failing franchise, you got to shake things up.
Yeah.
And, and Alf, is the unfortunate.
He's paid the price.
He's paid the price. No, I agree with you that it's not really, it's not kosher for us to celebrate the loss of jobs, especially guys that have been there for so long. But I think that this is firing this early has got to be considered a little bit of a courtesy, almost. Somebody brought up, does it mean? I forget who was bringing that up that you're referring to on Twitter that was saying, was it? Oh, okay. Well, it's a good thing Alf's not here then exactly. To say his name. No, I think that if you're getting rid of these guys this early in the process, I actually almost think that that's just giving them time to find their next destination. You know, you're not busying them with the work that you're not going to have them do anyway next year, because I think that they do have in mind a full clean sweep in that front office of the personnel issues. So yeah, they're probably just doing them the courtesy of saying, you know, hey, go out and start trying to find your team. Don't worry about sending you over to North Dakota State to look at Cole Payton. You know, don't. So I think that that's what's going on more so than the idea that they already know who the new general manager is going to be. Because if they did already know who the next general manager was going to be, then I think there's really only one answer, and that's Champ Kelly. You know, I think that if Champ Kelly were set to inherit the job, then perhaps that theory might hold some water. That's what's going on here.
Yeah. Do you think McDaniel revealed anything by saying that he was in the room making decisions along with Champ Kelly as far as what they did at the trade deadline, Simon?
And Brandon Shore.
And Brandon Shore.
Yeah, but not Marvin Allen. I think it's all instructive, and I think we're trying to get to the bottom of the whether or not McDaniel's going to be here next year, if he's going to be here. You know, look, this team is, for whatever we've said about it to this point, and I know that, you know, certainly there are some in the fan base that want victories more than the draft picks, or in terms of the highness of the draft pick. But there is a situation now that faces us where in 3 weeks' time the Dolphins could be 6-7. You know, I mean, we play a beleaguered Washington team. I see Daron Payne's had his suspension upheld, so he won't play at the weekend. Obviously, Daniels is out, and you know that Washington have been hammered in the 40s the last 2 weeks by the Seahawks, and then yesterday by the Lions.
McLaurin will travel, but will not play.
There's a huge opportunity for the Dolphins there, you know, to get another win on the board, and then they play against the Saints and against the Jets, and all of a sudden, you could be, you know, going to Acrisure to play the Steelers at 6-7, and on the outskirts of a wild card inexplicably, and then you go back to, you know, the kick return for a touchdown against the Patriots, the final minute against the final drive against the Chargers, the way that we collapsed against Carolina, and you know, how different would this season look if we'd have won those 3 games that we should have won, and then we've got these 3 games coming up. I mean, it's an altogether different proposition. Chris Greer would probably still be in his job, as would Adam Engroff and Anthony Hunt, but
Jalen Phillips would still be here.
So, I mean, I don't necessarily, I said this on social media yesterday, I don't necessarily see the benefit of finishing 7-11 or 6-12 or whatever it is. That I don't see the benefit of it, because it helps nobody really. It just keeps us in limbo. But it's hard not to. I mean, Chris and I were messaging each other yesterday about, you know, we were 16-0 up and kind of laughing about, oh my God, you know. And this was obviously having watched Fernando Mendoza and his heroics at the end of the Penn State game. But kind of now all of a sudden you're kind of seeing Arvell Reese potentially slipping out of range, and you know, you're kind of looking at those second, even third tier guys when we end up picking 10th or 12th or 14th. And I know that doesn't matter to a lot of people, and that's absolutely fine. I totally get that. And yesterday was fun. It was a good win. We played really well. But I do think there is a possibility now, and the fans should be getting ready for it, that all of a sudden we could be 6-7 with 4 games to go. And I mean, who the hell knows? But I mean,
yeah, but but I think it's also instructive. Like if they do go 6-7, I think that if they do go 6-7 and they're staring right down the barrel of some pretty difficult games to even get to a winning record. But if they are 6-7, you could go back and look at all the failures of this season and then assign blame as to why this team was not a wild card team and not
I do think it's instructive
contender.
That team performed the way it did yesterday, given the hole that it's put itself in. And whatever we think about McDaniel, whatever we think about the processes, and it was hilarious to I like Christmas, the start of the game, and to see that we burned timeout, and had a penalty before we'd even snapped the ball was pretty hilarious.
And evidently burned the timeout just out of pure anger.
Yeah, just out of pure anger. Yeah, absolutely.
Can I say, and I don't care what anybody think, maybe I'm immature. I loved that, and I watched it live and enjoyed the hell out of it. I don't know if you guys saw the Chargers. It's not only this game, okay? And it's not the ACC refs or the SEC refs. It's the NFL also. If you saw that Chargers-Steelers game, they went to Terry 4,000 times in that game. Terry, why is this not a penalty? And Terry's like, I don't know. I think this should be a penalty. They clubbed DK Metcalf, and they had some type of explanation that, it was incidental. He was in his back pedal. And no, you interfere with DK Metcalf, time immemorial. That's a penalty right there at the spot of the foul.
Terry McCauley was on more than Mike Tirico, so
he spent the whole game. He spent the whole game explaining away every single call. Look, I got a kick out of it. Maybe because I was angry as well. Because
he's very good, Terry McCauley, as well. I'm not averse to hearing it, but poor guy, he had his feet up in the studio with a pina colada on, and all of a sudden he's got to do like 600 different hits throughout the game because this has happened, that's happening.
Yeah, but Mike McDaniel revealed after the game, I was kind of angry, so I wanted an explanation. So he stopped the game before the game started, just so he could give the official shit on a motion that, it should have been encroachment. Like it should have been 1st and 5, 5-yard gain for the Dolphins via penalty,
which is something that you can only do if you're 2-7.
Yeah,
right. Yeah. Like this is not, if you're 7-2. And you're looking at, a really important game, and you might need those timeouts later on. There was a situation where they could have used a timeout, later on. So, you just can't burn your timeouts all willy-nilly. To your point, Simon, about them possibly going 6-7, the caution I'd have there is, it seems okay. They've had 7 bad days at the office. They've had 3 good ones, right? And it seems like it seems like every one of those 3 good days at the office, we're very expectant at that point. Okay, well they're gonna stack up some wins now, and then they go and blow it against a truly terrible Cleveland Browns team. Like things like that. The caution that I would have here is that not only are they still the team that lost those 7 games, but also a number of the games come in exactly the type of situations that Mike McDaniel has had a really hard time getting his team up to play for. And that starts next week in Madrid. We're talking about any special situation. You could tally it up, all the games that Mike McDaniel has played or has coached, either off schedule sort of, nighttime game, West Coast trip, international playoff, 20, 30, 40 degree weather, any kind of adverse conditions whatsoever. And there's something like 6-18 over the 4 years in any of those special conditions. That includes, big flights over to international or to the West Coast and playing at odd times. They're playing in the morning. They're playing at 7 in the morning, something like that. Yeah. It's he has not been good at getting his team up to play in anything except like 1 p.m. and 4 p.m. games on Sundays in the NFL. And so that, they've got 3 of those remaining on the schedule, including next week against the Washington Commanders, who, I think the wisdom would be, after watching the Dolphins just paste the Bills as they did last week, and then Washington, looking at where the Commanders are right now, you'd say Dolphins easy. right? These are teams going in different directions. But that is the wild card. They're going to have to go to an international game in Madrid, big flight, jet lag, and all that, and get their team up to play. And historically speaking, Mike McDaniel has been horrid at exactly that kind of thing. So it's I hate to rain on anybody's parade if we're thinking all of a sudden we get this big win against the Bills and it's like, oh yeah, we're going to rattle off the next three. That's easy. Commanders, Saints, Jets, they're all bad teams. I just don't think it works like that this year for the Miami Dolphins. If it worked like that any year, given the Dolphins' propensity to play badly in those sort of special circumstances.
Yeah. By the way, there is some news as far as one of those special circumstances. They do play the Cincinnati Bengals later on in the season on Sunday Night Football at home. It's in Miami. Mm-hmm. Barry Jackson has revealed that the NFL is eyeballing that game, and if both teams are outside of the in the hunt graphic, which is, I'm telling you, if the Dolphins get into the in the hunt graphic, that thing's going to hit better than the Super Bowl almost. Like, we should have a celebration if they get into that in the hunt graphic. But if both teams are out,
not me, my friend, not me. I will.
If they're both out,
I might stop watching from that point on.
If they're both out of the in the hunt graphic, that thing will go to 1 p.m. game. But if they're both in, yeah, that's going to stay a Sunday Night Football game. And it looks like Joe Burrow will be back for that game. So that should be
that does look like, yeah.
That'll be a lot of fun, which is like that's the fun part about 6 and 7 is because you get to judge them against teams that they're not better than. Because look, Cincinnati's defense is horrid, but that offense is a machine. And when they get Burrow back, that thing's going to be insane to defend.
They're going to have to score like 100 points a game because the defense is so bad. So
yeah, but still, that's a lot. Facing that offense, that's going to be difficult. And Pittsburgh on the road is going to be difficult. New England's really, really good. You got to play them on the road. So it's an impossible task, really, down the stretch for Miami. So you're going to get to really judge this team and completely, really. All right, let's talk about a little bit.
The Tampa game as well.
Oh, yeah, the Tampa game. Yeah, and it's here. Although Tampa is walking wounded. Like, they're a mess physically right now. They're a really, really good team. But
that's what, December 28th. So it's long.
Yeah, they might be healthy by then. Yeah,
who knows?
They might be healthy by then. Let's talk about some of the players. And then in the second half of this show, we'll finish up this first half right here. But in the second half of the show, we'll talk about the actual game and what they did and a little bit about the Buffalo Bills. Because maybe this game was more meaningful than just a 2-7 team getting their third win. But younger players in this game kind of showed up and, I already said, look, man, Greg Dulcich last week made more plays in his first 6 snaps than Tanner Conner has made here in 3 years. I think Greg Dulcich is what, he's 20. He just turned 26 years old. I believe he's probably a roster player for next season. And Juju Brents, he was pretty good in Indianapolis as a special teamer and dime corner. Man, he was fabulous yesterday. Also a young player. Dolphins better start getting used to, especially for next season and possibly 2027, unless they're going to go binge spending again, to find some of these younger players that they could fill out the bottom of the roster. 2 ain't bad. What are your thoughts on the young players in yesterday's game, of which I think that I saw the stat, they had 15 play more than 15 snaps yesterday, under 26 years old.
Yeah,
which is a lot.
We talked about it on Thursday's show, really, about the poor job that they've done churning the bottom of the roster, and that's how good teams, just do a better job of it than we do. But I thought Brents was excellent. I think he was slightly miscast in that system in Indianapolis. You go back to his Kansas State tape, and he was excellent. I thought he was an excellent, really, a good corner coming out. And yeah, he was absolutely on lockdown. I mean, 2 catches, 12 yards, 5 targets, 1 PBU, 1 bubble recovery. And he shut down. I mean, I don't think Keon Coleman is a great player by any stretch of the imagination, but he didn't have any safety help over the top, and he did a really good job. I think part of the indictment, when the wash up comes at the end of the season in terms of looking at what happened, for example, is persisting with people like Tanner Connor when Hayden Rucci is clearly, when you're looking for a guy who can block, Hayden Rucci's done a good job of blocking and actually looked more like an NFL player in terms of his ability to move and take on, the touchdown run that Achan had, the first one. Rucci slips over, manages to get himself back on his feet, and then has the key kind of cut-off block to allow Achan to get to the second level. And, I think in weeks, months, years past, we would have seen, guy steps on his own dick, falls over, crashes into Ed Oliver, who then makes the tackle 4 yards behind the line of scrimmage, knocks the ball out, it hits Achan on the leg, bounces off to his head and goes back into the end zone. It's recovered for a touchdown by Karen Johnson. That's the sort of thing that would have happened to us. But actually, it just feels like they found a combination and a thing that works. Dulcich has done a really nice job with the ball in his hands, and I don't think that was ever the problem when he was at UCLA. It wasn't the problem early on in Denver. It wasn't the problem. I think the issue for him has been injuries. But if you can keep him healthy, then he looks, like you say, like a rosterable player and a guy who, look, watching that game, I watched the Rams and the 49ers, and the Rams are getting use out of 3 tight ends, and all of them are contributing touchdowns and catches and those sorts of things. And that's what you want the Dolphins to be able to do. And you want to be able to go 2 and 3 deep and just see guys, Dulcich having 2 for 36, Rucci having a catch and a load of key blocks, Waller or whoever it is having 5 catches, and because that's what other good teams do. So yeah, I just think it's good that we finally got to that point, but you kind of think we've had months and months and months to kind of get here. Why has it taken so long to find a guy that can do what you've been crying out to do, which is, be an active motion blocker, somebody that can motion back into the line and take on a 5 technique and take on an edge guy and do those sorts of things. So yeah, I thought the younger guys played well. And Melifonwu, had the key pick, and there was, he got even Jack Jones, who's been an absolute punching bag on the show. He came up with a few big plays yesterday. So yeah, hats off to them. I think they did a really good job, and everybody seemed to play their part, whether that was special. I mean, we never talk about special teams, but the punters had an unbelievable season, and he absolutely nailed one at the 3-yard line. He was booting 60-yarders left, right, and centre. So, Jake Bailey had a great day. So yeah, I mean, it just makes you kind of go back and think, but where was this Thursday night against Baltimore? Why could we be so good against Buffalo and yet so bad, the week earlier? And it's kind of confounding. And I think maybe if Mike McDaniel does lose his job, it'll be because of that reason as much as anything, that kind of wobbling inconsistency, Chris, that has just sort of plagued us.
Yeah, that inconsistency is exactly the point is, and that's why, again, the caution about these next 3 weeks against 3, seems like bad opponents, until they show that they can achieve consistency, then we got to act very skeptical of the results over that stretch, particularly, going international, playing in Madrid and having your team, actually energetic in a setting like that, which isn't always the case with any team, let alone the Dolphins over the last 4 years. So, but account me kind of, not quite bought in on a Dulcich, kind of development. I am multiple times more bought in on a Juju Brents and what he showed in that game. Just up and down, forward to back, every single snap in that game. It was actually, it was a revelation. It did come mostly against Keon Coleman, I think. And that is an interesting matchup between the two because of, kind of size, speed profiles, what type of player they are. So there's a caution to my optimism about Juju Brents because of that, because of the specific type of matchup it was. And he's not going to see exactly that type of player every week. Then again, will he even play every week? Because Rasul Douglas is going to come back. And as you said, for as much as we've punched down on Jack Jones in various weeks, he's the epitome of up and down, of the up and down player, the roller coaster type of player. And he had an up, this week. He punched the ball out, I think, multiple times in that game. And I think that's so what's going to happen next week? You're gonna get Rasul Douglas back, and they're going to still want to start Jack Jones because they've been pretty committed to that this whole time. Even when they started rotating him, they quickly wrapped up that experiment, the rotation experiment, and just went with him. And so is Juju Brents actually going to play? I don't know the answer to that question yet. I'm sure that they are going to want to see him some more, but I am a little bit cautiously bought in on that development, on that particular young player. But I would, Greg Dulcich, I think we're missing the more significant development at that position, which is Daniel Brunskill taking the snaps at tight end and what that has done to the offense all the way around, and particularly in the run game. I think that is the development. I mean, forget a Greg Dulcich. I could give two shits. I think it's more about Daniel Brunskill and what he's done there, and that is the development from a coaching standpoint. That you would ask the question, why would you never even think about this in the previous 3 years, let alone the previous 2 months prior to them actually experimenting with that? I think it does leave you with those sorts of questions. So, it worked well. It worked really well again, though, in this particular game. It had an impact. And so I think that's going to be a formula going forward.
Yeah. And so many young players played that we still got to talk about a few more. The actual rookies that got drafted this past year. Zeke Biggers played 19 snaps. I went over the tape. Kenneth Grant had a couple of run stops, a couple of impressive pass rushes, but he was mostly wallpaper in this game, which means he was just there. Jonas Savannah, good counting stats, no sacks, 4 pressures, had a couple of key blocks, nothing to write home about. But I will talk about one guy, Jordan Phillips. This was maybe his best game, or I'm going to go ahead and say it's the best game any of the rookies has played this year. He was stout in the run game, and he was going up against a very good interior offensive line of Buffalo's. And, man, he looks like a guy that should be here for a very long time. And kind of the headliner, I think, so far out of this rookie class. What did you make of the rookies, the actual draftees, Simon, that played yesterday?
Yeah, starting to come around. Those interior defenses, look, it always takes time, and we've been critical, rightly so. You kind of want to see them hold their ground at least, rather than getting, railroaded 6, 7, 8 yards off the line of scrimmage. But it was always Harlan Phillips coming out, and I thought he would be a stud. I didn't love the Kenneth Grant pick, but I loved the Phillips pick, and I thought he's just going to get so much better and better as he gets stronger and stronger, and he's strong enough as it is. But now you're seeing him holding up, 2 guys, double team, letting, I thought Jordan Brooks was outstanding yesterday. I mean, everybody's talking about they just couldn't contain Brooks. And I think a lot of it was because of the way that Phillips was playing, just, soaking up doubles and just allowing people behind him to make plays, Chris.
Yeah, I think we've got it as far as how the young players played. Jason Marshall played a little bit more. I thought that was a bit more up and down. To be honest, there was one play he made. I thought that was kind of a bad throw. But he did make the play. But otherwise not in great position. But I think I noticed Zeke Biggers out there. He is a gigantic, defensive lineman. He looked like it. I think Jordan Phillips at this point, it's okay to say that he's the best rookie on the team so far this year.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not even sure that, frankly, I'm not even sure that it's been close. Between the rookies, and that's a bit damning of the top picks. But then again, it's early. It's about halfway through the first season, so we'll see. But yeah, I know, I agree with you. He did play well. I thought Dante Trader played another pretty good game overall. You're going to run into those situations though, like last week against Zay Flowers, where he just doesn't have, he doesn't have the speed, the athleticism to keep up with somebody, running all across the field like that. But he, in this game, he was not exposed for anything like that. He just had a solid game overall.
All right, we're going to go to break, and when we come back, we will talk about the game almost exclusively. A couple of things toward the end of the show, but first, these words. All right, and we're back. All right, Miami 30, Bills 13. That's the headline. Further headlines are, if you take a stroll through Buffalo Bills Twitter or just the Buffalo Bills beat, they're talking about firing Sean McDermott. They're talking about wholesale changes. They're talking about Joe Brady is a terrible offensive coordinator. They're 1.5 back from New England. New England plays a series of bums, of which we are one of them, by the way, because we play them the last game of the season. That game might not mean anything to us. So we could be a tough out against New England because traditionally we've played them pretty tight, and we played them tight earlier in the season. But that game might not mean anything to us. So they might have smooth sailing with one game against the Bills left. While the Bills, if you've looked at their schedule, it is murderous down the stretch. They're nervous. What do you make of it? I'll go to you first, Simon. What do you make of this? Is it maybe over for this incarnation of the Buffalo Bills?
It could be. I mean, the thing that I think is the most, you wouldn't want to meet them in the playoffs. That's for sure. I think the thing that is the most, that stood out for me most of all, and it's kind of stood out through the season, but was really clear yesterday, was that the Dolphins, the way that they played, there was just nobody that could threaten over the top. That they don't have anything to stretch the field. So the Dolphins played the kind of cloud coverage where they just knew they weren't going to get beaten over the top, and you could just force everything down inside into that area. And even when Josh was, you could see they were trying to load up deep shots, and they just didn't have the horses to get over the top because they've got no threat to take the top off the defense and push those safeties back. And then the reason James Cook wasn't able to run was because everything was happening within sort of 20 yards of the line of scrimmage. And I think that's the biggest indictment. I think that will cost them. But then look what they did the week before or 2 weeks before. They beat the team that's been in 8 or 9 of the last 9 AFC championships in the Chiefs, and it wasn't as close as the score suggested. So,
although that's a tradition for the Buffalo Bills, they're
absolutely
5 in a row against the Chiefs.
They're still a good team. And you, like I said, I don't think you'd want to face them in the playoffs. But is the window closing? I don't think it closes until Josh Allen, retires. Quite frankly, when you've got a quarterback that good, it's hard for a window to shut, isn't it? But I don't think it looks. Look, Brandon B could go and draft a couple of absolute speedsters in the first 2 rounds in the draft and come away with a couple of guys that can run the 10.5s or whatever in terms of the 100 meters. They get away with Chris Brazel or a Denzel Boston or guys like that who could really can really fly, and all of a sudden it's a different matter altogether. So Chris, you wouldn't want to rule them out, but you also kind of might be struggling to rule them in, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I'm a little bit torn here because right away when the Dolphins faced them in week 3, for as bad as the Dolphins have been this year, the Bills did not look unassailable in that game, right? In week 3, yes, we were racing to the bottom to try and lose the game at the end, but I think that they were beatable in that game. And so here we are, and we get the rematch, and not only are they beatable, we beat them pretty soundly, I think. So they're definitely a softer team this year than they have been in the past. Is the window closing? No, absolutely. I don't see that. They may make coaching changes. Miami Dolphins, there have been times in our franchise history where we are ready to fire coaches, after 10 and 6 seasons and stuff like that. Like because we're just, it's all about your expectations. If your expectations are that you're playing for Super Bowls because you should be that good, then you get fired because you don't meet that. So I think, no, I don't think while Josh Allen is there, certainly the window is not closing. I think you bring up an excellent point about their makeup with the wide receivers and the inability to make plays deep down the field. But also, I mean, I hate to say it, but there was a lot of earmarks in this game that looked like classic trap performances and letdown performances, and sort of we messed around a little bit too much too early and then couldn't get control of it when we decided to finally lock it down, and the Dolphins have been in those games before, plenty. And that's what it looked like to me from the Bills standpoint, that when you look at the fumbles that they had, you look at the interception that Josh Allen threw to Melifonwu and just threw it straight to him. It was pretty. I mean, there was a little bit. I mean, there were even some play calls that you'd really have to question, some short yardage play calls and things like that. It just looked like too cute. I think at the halftime, Sean McDermott said something like, "We're not playing Buffalo Bills football," and I think oddly that didn't just sound like some sort of rhetorical thing. Like, no, actually that is how they were. That is how they were performing in that game, or at least how they were not performing in that game. So yeah, I think that this is a team that is prone to losing focus, the Buffalo Bills team this year. And that's where we see it against us. I thought it was happening in week 3 that they were losing focus against us. It's just that at that time we were probably, considerably worse even than we are right now. So I think that's their cross to bear this year, is if they can really lock down their focus and maintain consistency instead of just kind of letting up off the gas, periodically.
Yeah, a couple of things coming out of this game as far as stats. I saw a graphic that they had the 9 worst run defense performances of this season. 4 belong to the Dallas Cowboys defense. 2 belong to the Dolphins, but 3 belong to the Buffalo Bills. It's just 3 teams that are responsible for the 9 worst run defense performances. Another stat, and it's, you can't do this, okay? But for shits and giggles, and this one's from Kyle Krabs. Dolphins defense is ranked in EPA per play 12th in the NFL if you take away the first 2 games of the season.
But you take away
Yeah.
Because the first 2 games are 2 of the worst performances of the entire season. Remember, they had the lead and they lost.
Though.
They lost by a kickoff return to the Patriots. But go back to that game. They could not get off the field for 3 quarters until they finally did in the 4th quarter against the Patriots offense. So,
but that's actually really instructive, Alf. Like the defense started off. Listen, there was a lot of turnover on this team. Like, and I know that people talk about that, but I mean it's a real thing. It's a different team. It's a different unit altogether. It's a different defense. There was no defense in the NFL had as much turnover as the Miami Dolphins heading into the beginning of the year. And so this is why I kept saying it all along. This reminds me a lot of 2019. This defense is going to look absolutely atrocious at the beginning. It's going to get better and better, and it's going to be, you could draw a straight line. And that is exactly what's happened with the defense. Is they were atrocious, then they were slightly less atrocious, and then slightly less atrocious, almost mediocre, and it's like, that's where they're at right now. With the showing that they had against a really good offense and Josh Allen, a really good quarterback. this week. I think that you can draw a straight line with the defense. I think the issue is that the offense is not a straight line. It is a which offense shows up thing that keeps happening with the Miami Dolphins under Mike McDaniel. And it has always been that way, if you think about it, since 2022. It's not just they're getting better and better as the season goes on, which you could always say classically about like those Bill Belichick defenses or those Tom Brady offenses. You could track their EPA and other high test analytics that they get better and better as the year goes on. The Dolphins offense isn't like that. It is totally, schizophrenic who shows up today. Like it's a multiple personalities thing. Who shows up today? This week, the boys that showed up on offense this week really showed up. Against Atlanta, they really showed up. Cleveland in between. I think that's the way it is on offense. And so if you're making the case for coaching staffs that should be kept on next year, I'm looking at the defense before I look at the offense.
Simon, watching some of the veterans yesterday, Jordan Brooks, yeah, absolutely brilliant. But one guy who I thought played his best game of the season, and he's everywhere. And in the All-22, he is just plastered in coverage against their tight ends. Minkah Fitzpatrick was absolutely fabulous yesterday.
Is there a question there?
on that defense. I wouldn't mind Minkah Fitzpatrick being part of the solution. You need that vet to actually take younger guys under the wing and under his wing. And I wouldn't like, I really would not like to just go wholesale a bunch of 23-year-olds in the secondary next season. You kind of want an old head out there, probably one in each room, one in the cornerback room, one in the safety room. I think Minkah Fitzpatrick is probably a guy that should be here a little longer than we originally expected. What do you think about that, Simon?
Yeah, I think, he's become, since he moved to the nickel, I think he's been excellent. And I agree, you need an old head. And if he's going to play at the same level next year and he plays in that position and we can bring in younger safeties and we can get younger and better on the outside, then Chris, why wouldn't he? I mean, he makes an awful lot of sense.
Well, you'd have 15.6 million reasons not to.
Well, there is that.
There is that. And that's what I think that we still have to keep in mind when we're talking about Minkah Fitzpatrick, because first off, before he moved to the slot, were we talking about Minkah Fitzpatrick in positive ways? No, we weren't. Were we talking about Minkah Fitzpatrick, who we paid? We paid as much money to move on from Jalen Ramsey to move into Minkah Fitzpatrick this year in terms of cash on the barrelhead. We paid about as much money as we would have just to keep Jalen Ramsey, right? It was that much money. Would we have talked about Minkah Fitzpatrick in any sort of positive light whatsoever if he had not moved to slot out of desperation, mind you? Because Kader Kohou went down, basically everybody at slot just kept going down over and over again. And whether it's Kader Kohou or even his backups, and then Jason Marshall started there, was not really that good and went down with injury. And then they brought back Cornell Armstrong to try and take it down, and he was just atrocious. Until Minkah went to that slot position, we wouldn't have been talking about him in any kind of positive light, and certainly not positive relative to $24 million or $20 million or whatever it was that we would have just paid just to keep Jalen Ramsey on. So next year, Kader Kohou presumably may come back, right? And so what's happening? Oh, we've lost Alf again. I think he just hates us. But
just wrap this shit up and let's go and watch Monday Night
Football.
Football.
No, I think that next year that's exactly the question. Then okay, we're going to play 16 or pay $16 million to Minkah to move back to a safety position. He was entirely lackluster in playing for the Dolphins early on. And so we're not getting the formula that's making us say, wow, look how good Minka's playing this week in and out. So I think that no, you do not pay Minka Fitzpatrick $16 million to do for the defense next year what he is doing for them in the positive ways this year as a slot corner. I just don't see it.
It's fair. It's fair. He's not here, so I mean, here he is.
I mean, I see him on the screen, but you know, he's all dark.
Great for the people listening on the actual audio.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, for the people on the audio.
Should we just move ahead to our players of the game and get the hell out of Dodge? Go on, you go first.
Yeah, I mean, I think that on offense, I mean, just look at what Devon, not just because I have him on my fantasy team and he just absolutely, blew things out and ensured my victory. No, I think Devon Achane had one hell of a game. And that I think front to back, you got to give that to him and all the way around. So I don't even know if I need to give a defensive player, but if I did, I would say Juju Brents just because that's a hell of a debut. That's it.
Yeah, hard to argue against either of those. I would say just that kind of unsung. I did think Brooks had an outstanding game, so I would throw him in there as well. Offensively, hard to look past Achane for what he did, and the way he just hoovered up yards and what was it, something like 224 total yards, I think. So yeah, Alf, your players of the game before we get out of here.
Yeah, on offense, it's obviously the two young guys who I think are the solution going forward. Jalen Waddle, he's having a very, very good season. He's performing every single game ever since Tyreek went down, except that game in Cleveland. But who was good in that game in Cleveland? Nobody. So other than that, Jalen Waddle's been great. So it's my two young guys, Jalen Waddle and Devon Achane on offense. On defense, I'm going to give this guy his flowers. 10 pressures, a sack. He was a menace yesterday. Bradley Chubb was absolutely fabulous to the point where I'm talking myself into a Matt Judon type contract next year for him if he wants to take it, which he won't. But he was noticeable. He was a menace yesterday on defense, and a big reason why they won that game. I did not understand that taunting penalty. If you watch it on slow motion, I guess, he kind of rubbed his nuts on Josh Allen's head. And the referee looked at it and said, yeah, that's 15 yards. Consequential penalty because you go from third and what was it going to be? 3rd and 18 to 1st and 10 at the 18-yard line. You lost all the sack yardage, plus you gave them 15 yards. They scored a touchdown on the next play. So pretty big penalty. Other than that, I thought it was absolutely fabulous. So those are my three players of the game. The two young guys, Bradley Chubb on defense. All right. Nice.
Take us out of here. Let's go watch Monday Night Football.
All right. And that's going to be a great one. Jalen Phillips' debut. I'm caught. In fact, let's do that. That's what I knew I wanted to say something. Let's get on record here. His debut. I'm going to call it 2 sacks, 1 TFL tonight. Jalen Phillips. Simon, give me a headline for Jalen Phillips' debut tonight. You could just say he'll be wallpaper. He won't be noticeable, but hit it.
He might have a sack.
Yeah, I think he gets blanked off the score sheet only because I promised 2 Eagles fans at the office. They're asking me, Jalen Phillips, we just traded for your guy. Well, like, tell me about him. And I'm like, well, he was playing really well over the last month, so I think you're going to be happy with him this year. I don't know what you're going to do with him next year, but sign him and blah, 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 whatever. But you're going to be really happy with him this year. You're going to love him. Because I said that, he will have a 0 on the score sheet tonight. Absolute 0.
I think he's going to play well. He's wearing number 50. And who's number 15 on the Eagles? Because he's wore 15 his entire career. So
I tell you, who's not going to be number 15 on the Dolphins? That's Fernando Mendoza.
That's not happening. And I think that Heisman is. I don't think that the Heisman is completely crazy. If you look at I don't think it's done. If you look at, and let's finish there.
No, not done.
If you look at Ty Simpson's schedule, if Ty Simpson runs through that schedule, that's going to be a gauntlet that I don't remember the last time a quarterback ran that gauntlet of ranked teams and top teams and playoff teams. So I think Ty Simpson the guy has 1 interception, 20 touchdowns. I think Ty Simpson can win the Heisman over Fernando Mendoza. Your thoughts, Simon, and we'll finish up there.
I think there's 4 or 5 guys. Mendoza, obviously. I think Julian Sayin at Ohio State is, if they win the national championship, I mean, he's playing. He's playing better than anybody in the country. I mean, they're 9-0, they're number 1 in the country. They're never trailed in the second half. He's thrown 181 passes without a pick. I mean, he's 3 straight games of 300 yards passing, 80% accuracy in those last 3 games. Yes, he's throwing to the guys he's throwing to, but nevertheless, I think Diego Pavia of Vanderbilt, nobody carries their team more than Pavia does. And Vanderbilt are a great story. And I think that the kid he's never going to win because he's a linebacker, but the kid at Texas Tech, Jacob Rodriguez, is having just the most unbelievable season. I mean, he leads the nation in forced fumbles, and he's got 7 forced fumbles. He had a pick 6 against Oklahoma State. He had a pick against BYU. He's got 3 picks this season. He's tied 8th in the nation for total tackles. I mean, he's been unbelievable this year for them. Son of a blackjack dealer. His wife is a U.S. Army fighter, helicopter pilot. This guy. If there was ever anybody that deserved to be, at least deserved to be in New York for the ceremony, it's him. So.
Son of a blackjack dealer is a line.
You just whipped that one out. You just pulled that one out of there. Like you just had that sitting in your pocket. I was just looking in the I've already done off-ball linebackers in the draft book, and he was a quarterback in high school. Loves playing chess, and he's the son of a blackjack dealer.
Nice.
This guy is the son of a horse trader. He's great. He's
son of a deep sea fisherman.
Chris, you want to add anything to this?
No, I think that the one thing that I will add to it, because I'm a bit of a Mendoza fan, is that just it depends. Like Simon, you can confirm this for me. They're gonna go through the playoffs before. Like, when do they decide the Heisman? Like, how far into that situation will we be? Because I have a hard time imagining that if Indiana
I think it's right before the first playoff game they do the Heisman.
It's awarded early December, isn't it? Before the season played.
I mean,
so you're not going to see him. Indiana's going to have a bye, so you're not going to see Mendoza play football. When they vote for the Heisman.
No, but I mean, like, if they come in, if they come in at top seed, and you would think that it's going to be Ohio State, right? But if Indiana comes in at top seed, unbeaten, and let's say Ohio State stumbles somewhere along the way, then I just think that the historical nature of Indiana's run is going to really work in favor of Mendoza. But that's a very big if. And I understand that.
I mean, Indiana have got Purdue and Wisconsin, both unranked. Ohio State have got Rutgers, UCLA, and obviously Michigan to play.
That Michigan game is always tricky.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, that's a classic. That's a classic. So, I mean, if you see Ohio State stumble, if they stumble, then Indiana walks in as like the number 1 seed, the number 1 team in the country heading into the playoffs with a bye in the playoffs. And so I just think, like, there's such a historic nature that there might be a lot of backing for, their number 1 guy there, their quarterback.
Yeah.
All right. And we'll end it there. It's gonna be a fun finish to the college football season. That's a fact. I saw those college football playoff ratings, and I think we're 1 off season away from a super league. I think that's happening because there are 11. You heard that correctly. There's only 12 teams that are going to make the playoffs. 12. There are 11 SEC teams with odds higher than the entire ACC except for 1. And that will be the ACC champion. And that's because they have to send one in. So we're headed for a super league. Like, that's a fact. All right, we're going to end it right there. On Thursday, we will talk Madrid, Dolphins, Commanders. Marcus Mariota Tua Tagovailoa, 2 Hawaiians. It's going to be a lot of fun.
Simon Clancy in Madrid.
He will be there.
I will be there.
That's going to be pretty cool. You get to ask Mike McDaniel a question again.
I'm not flying in until Saturday, so I won't be at the pre-game presser, but I will be there afterwards. So hopefully they win, so I can ask something stupid.
Yeah. Oh, by the way, I how can I not mention it? I think I'm back in on Mike McDaniel for him trolling the Bills fans at the Elbow Room alone. And by the way, it is now confirmed that it was because there's video. Unless there's like AI experts all over the internet now creating videos.
I'm pretty sure we were wrapping this program 15 minutes ago.
Yeah, but I keep talking about things. But yeah, Mike McDaniel trolling the Bills fans. Loved it. All right, we'll talk about this game coming up on Thursday, but till then.